Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about the Player's Handbook, the Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition Player's Handbook. And so what I want to talk about is what we learned from the publication of this book. So last year in 2014, I said that I believed that the Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition Player's Handbook was the most important book that was being worked on anywhere in the world. And I believe that is true. And I believe new books. Of course, there's books that have been printed previously that were more important, but I think last year this was definitely the most important book. And the reason why is it was really instrumental in actually determining what the future of Dungeons and Dragons was, and really very much connected to that what the future of print books was. And so Dungeons and Dragons is so essentially Dungeons and Dragons is one of the few remaining last print products that is highly sought at and that makes international news, right? So when books are published, they usually don't make international news. It's kind of rare unless it's a huge mega author. And many of the mega authors that have previously done books don't really aren't really continuing to publish. For instance, J.K. Rowling, she's not publishing books that people care about. I hate to say that, but she's done with Harry Potter. Nobody really wants to read the rest of her stuff. People buy it because they're saying, I'm going to take a look at what she bought. But generally, there's not a lot of excitement about the book she's writing right now. Same thing with Stephanie Myers, the woman who worked on the Twilight series. Many of the major series that did make international news are no longer currently being written. And even I would even say Game of Thrones. It's literally been years since the last book was put out, and so there's really a halt on books that are being printed that make international news. And this book, the Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition Handbook, made international news. And so I think there are many lessons that we learned from the Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition Handbook. And so this is one of my first videos on what lessons we learned from the printing of the Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition Handbook and Player's Handbook. And so one of them, I believe, is this book was published, and it taught a lot of lessons about how books should be published and today. And I think there's just tons and tons of lessons we learned. So let's start down the road. One lesson to be learned is from a print perspective, and there's a lot connected to this, is basically going forward, if you're going to print a book, if you're going to take the time to engage a printer, that book should be full color, right? So there's absolutely no sense in I think there were clues of this a while ago, but I think D&D proves it. The Kindle is a great device. Most people's phone is a great device, and if you're printing black and white text, there's absolutely no reason to set that to paper. And I could go on, and there's a million articles on why it's a waste to do that anymore. But full color books are works of art. So if you're going to print any book today, it needs to be a work of art. It needs to have gold leaf. It needs to have it needs to have a $5, $10, $15, $25,000 full art cover. It needs to have the finest print values that you can get, right? And this book is quite impressive. Has fantastic art. Has multiple textures on the back. All those type of things. And so it's really quite, and actually if you can open up to any page and you can see full art every single page. And so that's really important. And the other thing I think that was proved by the printing of the Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition Player's Handbook is there were a lot of people were saying, it's only been 8 years since the last version, and I don't really want this book, and I don't really care about this book, and there were a lot of naysayers. Names matter, right? So Dungeons & Dragons is an American icon. It is a piece of American heritage. It is a platform. It is all of those things. Dungeons & Dragons is incredibly and important, and I believe it's a massively undervalued product. Massively undervalued. So it's just like jazz, comic books, and Star Wars. Those are all purely American products, and as things have rolled forward through the years, they become more and more valued and more mainstream. Maybe not so much jazz. Even that's generally mainstream, I would say. So, but I think Dungeons & Dragons people are going to wake up to see that it is really a multi-billion-dollar product. And the biggest reason why is it's just like comic books. Comic books are the goose that laid the golden egg. People, the mass market cares about the movies, but the value is in the books, which are being sold to readers, and readers are leaders. And it's the same thing with Dungeons & Dragons, with the video game industry. So many of the games in the video game industry have fantasy bases, and Dungeons & Dragons has more street cred than any fantasy product in the world. So this is just the first video on the lessons we've learned from Player's Handbook. Thanks for listening.